Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. This is Virginia. We're on the coast of Virginia, and they kept talking about blizzard, blizzard, blizzard. Well, we had one. I want to show you some pictures of what it's like. This was where we are right here. Look at that snow. And it was coming down, and it was blizzard conditions, and it was high wind, and wow. Look at those things. What in the world is that? You can't even recognize it. It's so.
Somebody couldn't get their window cleared off to take the picture.
Some of the folks couldn't get to work.
Yeah, lots of the folks couldn't get to work.
They have to stay at the Founders Inn. If they don't, they can't get in. Well, not only here, we're at the tip of the spear, so to speak, but all the way up the East Coast is being hit with a massive winter storm today. It includes something called a bomb cyclone. You ever heard about that?
Never heard of that.
I never. It's a weather system that's extremely powerful and with dangerous wind.
Well, the storm is bringing blizzard conditions to the southeast and treacherous driving conditions for motorists as it moves up the East Coast. Gary Lane has the story.
The brutal snowstorm was the worst to hit the coastal southeast in more than 30 years. And for those of us here at CBN Center in Virginia Beach, up to 10 inches of snow, blizzard winds, and many impassable roads. And it wasn't just in Virginia. The early January blizzard brought strong winds, ice, and snow to the Carolinas. This motorist slid off the interstate and into a ditch because of snow and ice in Johnston County, North Carolina.
Just after I crossed this exit 105, right? Yeah, so it was a little icy and it just slid off like right. I tried to steer it down back on track to right without applying any brake, but then it didn't help, so we just slid off road.
And snow fell in what is usually warm and sunny Florida.
It's pretty wild. I've never seen palm trees with snow on them before.
Slick, ice-covered roads caused multiple car accidents in South Carolina. And in Georgia, at least 220 people were hurt in accidents in Savannah alone.
I don't really even know how to drive on the road like this in this type of weather. People telling me to keep it slow.
Those more experienced with driving in the snow cautioned other motorists.
Drive slowly, drive with caution, take your time. If you have to go out in the morning, take your time. As far as that goes, work understands.
Those plowing the road say they could use a little understanding from motorists.
Give them room to move and work. They're just trying to clear the roads for everybody, so just fall in behind them as they're clearing the roads. And because if one of them gets in an accident, then that's one less truck that we got to fight to clear the roads with.
Forecasters predict the storm will bring coastal flooding, hurricane-force winds, and as much as a foot of snow as it barrels through the Delmarva Peninsula and up into the Northeast. People in Massachusetts stocked up on food items and winter supplies as they prepared for the monster storm.
We've bought lots of water. We do have heat in the house, which is great.
Many schools, government offices, and businesses are closed in much of the southeast and mid-Atlantic areas. Most flights in and out of East Coast airports have been canceled. Blizzard warnings remain in effect from Virginia all the way up to Maine. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, I echo our president who said, I'd like a little bit of that global warming. Where is it? Well, it was a different kind of storm. It hit the White House, a political storm. John Jessup has that.
That is right, Pat. President Trump blasted his former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, yesterday, saying he lost his mind when he was fired from his White House job last summer. The president is angry with Bannon after negative remarks he made about Trump and his family in a new book about the president. Trump's response came after the leaking of excerpts from the upcoming book by Michael Wolff, in which Bannon is quoted as calling the meeting between Trump, several campaign officials in Trump's campaign, and Russian diplomats as treasonous. The president's statement went on to say Bannon had nothing to do with his historic election, but everything to do with Judge Roy Moore's Senate loss in Alabama. Now that Bannon is on his own, he said, the president also said that he's learning that winning isn't as easy as I make it. Pat? Quite a fight.
Well, I hate to see this, I really do, but, you know, Bannon kind of got out on the far edge, and when he starts trying to take out Republican senators, that's not a cool thing. I mean, you've got one extra seat in the Senate right now, and you've got the member of your own team taking pot shots at the few senators that are in there. I mean, what does Bannon think he's doing? That wasn't smart. John?
Pat, despite political turmoil here in Washington, still more indications of a strong economy as manufacturers expanded at a faster pace last month, boosted by a sharp increase in new orders. The head of the Business Survey Committee says he can't do anything but smile with such a good report. That new report comes as the stock market is hitting record highs again, with the Nasdaq over 7,000 for the first time, and Pat, the Dow closing in at a record 25,000.
Dow futures are up to 25,000 and above. I mean, this is incredible, just incredible. So, I mean, how can people not feel happy? The unemployment rate is going down. The number of people seeking unemployment has diminished, dropped. The stock market record high. Wages are starting to go up. I mean, people are getting bonuses, and small businesses have got all kinds of goodies coming to them in the next few months. I mean, it's really good. And it looks like somebody along the way should salute the president and say, thank you, sir, for what you're doing. John?
Pat, the New York City Police Department and the FBI are investigating images on social media of what appears to be ISIS supporters taking selfies outside museums and other locations around New York as a possible warning of another attack. Our national security correspondent, Eric Rosales, has more on the threat and what law enforcement are doing about it.
The photo began circulating over the weekend. It shows a masked hooded man with an ISIS logo on his scarf. He's standing in front of a snow-covered sidewalk outside the Upper East Side Metropolitan Museum. The caption underneath it reads, "We are in your backyard, O worshippers of the cross."
It's being used to recruit, radicalize, and inspire lone wolves in New York.
Eric Feinberg is co-founder of GuyPec, a cyber intelligence firm that keeps track of online terrorism-related hashtags. Feinberg said the photos and others like them are meant to sow fear and to embolden potential lone wolf terrorists into taking action. Feinberg believes social media sites need to do a better job at filtering out this terrorist propaganda.
They need to do a better job, and they've got to stop with the rhetoric. They keep saying we're hiring thousands and thousands of people to do this, but yet we're finding this stuff, these posts and tweets, within minutes and seconds of posting.
A second image shared a few days later shows a telephone with an ISIS logo on the screen being held up in front of the One World Trade Center, the building that replaced the Twin Towers, which were destroyed during the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. The New York Police Department told CBN News, quote, "The NYPD is aware of the photograph. As with all terror-related threats, the NYPD is looking into the incident. At this time, there are no credible threats related to New York City." Last month, the pro-ISIS online propaganda poster displayed a fake picture showing a captive NYPD commissioner, James O'Neill, kneeling before a masked terrorist, and other images of ISIS supporters in Times Square. The group repeatedly threatened to attack the U.S. during Christmas and the New Year, but no major terrorist strikes took place. In late October, however, one ISIS sympathizer killed 8 people by running them over with a truck in Manhattan. And in mid-December, another ISIS sympathizer unsuccessfully attempted to set off a pipe bomb in New York City. Terrorist experts say with ISIS continuing to lose ground in both Syria and Iraq, the only motivation that the group has right now is to call on lone wolf attacks in order to prove that it's still influential. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
A reminder to stay vigilant. Thanks, Eric. Well, a New York City pastor is getting to know his neighbors and offering them a helping hand with a little inspiration from a Peanuts comic strip. Caitlin Burke brings us that story from the corner of 88th and Lexington.
Each Tuesday on a New York City street corner, a booth goes up, Pastor Gregory Fryer sits down, and the crowd streams by.
I have been pastor of this church for 25 years. But I have learned that it's easier to meet people if I simply sit on the street corner.
His bright yellow booth is a tribute to an old comic.
I'm charmed by the idea of Lucy and her psychiatric help booth. Psychiatric help, 5 cents, the doctor is in. And then I thought, well, I could do a pastor's version of that.
Some people get the reference, others not so much. Either way, Pastor Fryer makes it work.
All kinds of people stop by, and they all seem to stop by with goodwill. But sometimes people sit down on my booth and they burst into tears. And the reason for that is because we all have our own story. We all have our hopes and dreams and sorrows and setbacks. And I'm a pastor. My job is to listen as carefully as I can and then to speak back words of encouragement by talking about Jesus.
When you sit on the street corner as often as Pastor Fryer does, your community starts to notice. That's why he started this whole thing in the first place, to let people know he's available for them.
The church itself, it's beautiful. I love it with all my heart, but it's a little bit intimidating to people on the outside. That's what I'm afraid of. So I simply sit there in this kind of humble booth and make myself available.
Pastor Fryer's approach helps take away any fear of rejection as he does this week after week.
In theory, nobody could stop by my booth. That would still be okay because I'm looking at them. These are my neighbors. These are the neighbors to our church. So I try to look at them, and when I see them in the neighborhood, you know, I recognize them and they recognize me.
After making himself available for nearly a year, some of those he's prayed with on the street now walk through the doors of his church.
If we save only one soul, it'll be worth it. Well, we can point to one soul because we just baptized recently a young man who we met through the booth.
As for the 5-cent charge, the church provides your fee. Still, many drop in some coins or a few bucks to help in the cause.
I think it's because they like the idea. They like the idea of the pastor being available, even if they themselves don't feel the need for the pastor.
From the corner of 88th and Lexington in New York City, I'm Caitlin Burke.
Got on the move on the Upper East Side. Pat, I know you're quite familiar with doing ministry in New York City.
I did that. I mean, I stood outside of Times Square giving out telephone numbers for a helpline, and it was amazing. I didn't have the warm reception that the pastor had. Maybe if I had a turnaround collar, it would have been better, but people took these things, they threw them away, and they kind of laughed at you. I mean, it was really tough. But we did have a helpline, and I was right there on 42nd Street. So
I like the idea of getting out of the church, though. And
yeah, well, I mean, New York's a tough assignment. Let me tell you. I mean, I have done it. All right, but in any event, I mean, the pastor, God bless him. That's kind of a cute way of doing things, and he's right if you get a couple people. But we had, it was called Christian Soldiers, and I was, you know, helping in the early days when I was a student, and people would come by and we'd give them a telephone number, and then they could call up the telephone number. And, you know, a lot of people are hurting in New York.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, it's so crowded, and yet you feel so alone. And I've lived in Brooklyn, I lived in Queens, I lived in Manhattan. I mean, I've been all over the place. But it's at the same time, there's a great deal of warmth and friendliness, and people want to help you. So you just never know. But anyhow, I've been there, done that, baby. All right, Terry, what's next?